Enjoy your donuts and coffee. Any questions from last week on the sixth commandment? We are recording this. In fact, I think we got it better this week than we did last week on the website for those of you who want to look back or go over that. We're trying to record these and put them on the website for you. Any questions? Seventh commandment. You shall not steal. What does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we do not take our neighbor's money or possessions or get them in any dishonest way, but help him to improve and protect his possessions and income. Here's what the Large Catechism has to say. After the commandment about you personally and your spouse, next comes the commandment about temporal property. God also wants property protected. He has commanded that no one shall take away from or diminish his neighbor's possessions. And he continues on. This is, in short, the way of the world. Whoever can steal and rob openly goes free and secure, unmolested by anyone, and even demands that he be honored. Meanwhile, the little burglars who have once trespassed must bear the shame and punishment to make the former thieves appear godly and honorable. But let such open thieves know that in God's sight, they are the greatest thieves. He will punish them as they are worthy and deserve. I have this up here because I think it's good for you to see and know the history and background that in 1529, when this is written, Martin Luther was really upset with the religious leaders, the priests of that day. What they were doing, in essence, he called stealing. He was really upset with the fact that they were taking money from the poor, and the poor had nothing at all. And they did it, which seemed right, because you see, if you would put a money in the box, then that soul from purgatory springs. Or you could buy an indulgence, which is a piece of paper that declares your sins forgiven. And so they were taking all the money for themselves. And he said that they were the big thieves, and no one does anything to them. And yet, these same people who were stealing money, the priests who were stealing money from the beggars who had nothing, they ended up having to steal just to get bread and all that, and then they get punished, they get embarrassed, and the priests were looking holier than thou. And so it really upset Luther a lot that that's what was going on, and that's what he's writing about. We could probably extend it to politicians and people like that who have these positions of authority, who can do things that are illegal but get away with it because of their position. And so he's talking in his explanation, in Luther's explanation, that stealing is stealing. And it doesn't matter how prominent or improminent you are, stealing is stealing. Taking something that belongs to somebody else is stealing. And it doesn't matter what it is, how small or large. Make sense? Questions? So this commandment is all about stuff. That's a deep theological word that I use all the time because I like throwing big words around. Stuff. Whatever it is that you call your stuff, that's what we're talking about. Stuff. All right? Your home. Stuff. Your car. Stuff. This next one you might argue with me about, but you'll see what I mean. I'm really talking to men here, but it could be men or women. Stuff. All right? Joyce says, that's her. Because, look, men take a look at women as objects. as possessions, as stuff. We have the pictures of them. And what's better than all of that but not just cars, not just women, but women with cars. Because that's what will sell those cars, right? Stuff. Or let's make it very personal for me. Golf. Stuff. Notice Ed skipped out. Oh, there he is. And what you normally think about when we talk about selfishness and greed, what do you normally think about? Money. Money. In fact, churches will find themselves getting trapped into this thing. Because you see, we won't, for me to say this out loud, you'll disagree, but deep down inside you won't. The end justifies the means. It's for a good cause. But that's exactly what the religious leaders of Luther's day were saying. It's for a good cause. So, what is God? This is question 59 in the small catechism as you follow along. What does God forbid in the seventh commandment? Well, we have a list of things here, but I can summarize it with one word: selfishness. If selfishness is the motivating factor, you're breaking this commandment. So, we put it this way: greed. God forbids every kind of robbery, theft, dishonesty. I don't know why those are off-center, but they are. Take a look at Joshua chapter 7. There's a whole story here. We're going to highlight some verses. Joshua chapter 7. I hope it's still recording because the screen disappeared. I hope it is. If not, I messed it up, and I apologize. Joshua chapter 7. This is in the Old Testament. Genesis is the first book. Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua. It's the sixth book of the Bible. Joshua chapter 7, verses 1 through 5.
But the Israelites acted unfaithfully in regard to the devoted things. Achan, son of Carmi, son of Zimri, the son of Zerah, of the tribe of Judah, took some of them. So the Lord's anger burned against Israel. Now Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is near Beth Aven, to the east of Bethel, and told them, "Go up and spy out the region." So the men went up and spied out Ai. When they returned to Joshua, they said, "Not all the people will have to go up against Ai. Send 2,000 or 3,000 men to take it, and do not weary other people. For only a few men are there." So about 3,000 men went out, but they were routed by the men of Ai. We killed about 36 of them. They chased the Israelites from the city gate as far as the stone quarries, and struck them down on the slopes. At this, the hearts of the people melted and became like water.
Okay. So if the screen disappears up here, it's still recording though. Okay, perfect. That's all I care about. All right. I want you to, the name that Kevin said, I want you to remember it. And here's the best way to pronounce it so you'll never forget it. Achan. And you'll see why by the end of the story. If you can kind of hear it, that's what's going to happen. So what happened? Achan saw stuff. In fact, what did he see? It's right there at the very beginning. What did he see? Devoted things. This is the way we say this. He saw stuff made of gold and silver and jewels and all of that were set aside for use within the church. Devoted as in they were blessed to be used in the services of God's house. Devoted or committed to that function or purpose. And he saw all that gold and silver and gems and all that kind of good stuff. And what did he do? He took it. Nobody was looking. Who's going to know any differently? And up till this point, the Lord blessed the work of Israel when they were coming into the promised land, because that's what happened. They were entering the promised land, and as they were commanded, they were doing what they commanded. Israel didn't know what was going on. And they said, oh, the Lord's blessed us. We're going to be able to go against them, and we're going to be able to defeat them so that we can take the promised land as the Lord had promised. Well, what happened? They got clobbered. Kind of like Nebraska and Wisconsin. Got clobbered. What? Nebraska didn't get clobbered?
More like Ohio State.
Ohio State. Ohio State. It'll be like Michigan with Ohio State. Does that feel better here in a couple of weeks? Yeah, Ohio State's going to clobber us. Verses 10, 11, and 12 now.
The Lord said to Joshua, stand up. What are you doing down on your face? Israel has sinned. They have violated my covenant, which I commanded them to keep. They have taken some of the devoted things. They have stolen. They have lied. They have put them with their own possessions. That is why the Israelites cannot stand against the enemies. They turn their backs and run because they have been made liable to destruction. I will not be with you anymore unless you destroy whatever among you is devoted to destruction.
Okay. So Joshua is really saddened because he lost and he didn't know why. So the Lord tells Joshua what happened. What happened? What does the Lord say? You lost because, because Israel stole from me. Things that were dedicated to me, Israel stole. That's what it says, right? Isn't that interesting? Now, at the very beginning, we read, who stole? Achan, right? Achan stole. But the Lord said, Israel. Why? Doesn't that make you curious? It makes me curious. Because he's an Israelite. And either somebody else knew about it, or just the fact that he did it. And that means it goes to the other. We will learn what's called the close of the commandments. That the sins of the fathers visit the next generation to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, is what it'll say. Like father, like son. In other words, you know it's wrong, you find out about it, because odds are Israel knew about it, and they just said, well, I didn't do it. Wasn't me. But God says, it's all of you. See, what do we call that in the law today? An accessory to the crime. You know about it, and yet you do nothing about it. You know what's wrong, and yet, because you didn't physically do that, doesn't mean you're held guiltless. So what does God say to Joshua here in verse 12? You are not, as long as you condone this behavior and you allow it to go on, you're going to lose every battle you're ever in. 16 through 21. Somebody have it?
Early the next morning, Joshua had Israel come forward by tribes, and Judah was taken. The clans of Judah came forward, and he took the Zerahites. He had the clan of the Zerahites come forward by families, and Zimri was taken. Joshua Joshua said to Achan, my son, give glory to the Lord, the God of Israel, and give him praise. Tell him what you have done, and do not hide it from him. Achan replied, it is true, I have done against the Lord, the God of Israel. This is what I have done. When I saw in the plunder a beautiful robe from Babylonia, 200 shekels of silver and a wedge of gold weighing 50 shekels, I coveted them and took them. They are hidden in the ground inside my tent with the silver underneath.
Okay. I love this part. By the way, this is one of my favorite stories. Another one's in Acts chapter 5, which is going to be very similar to this one. And I love it. Because you have, oh, Laverne's not here. Doggone it. Doggone it. Just going to ask her a question. How many people left Egypt? At least 3 million people. Now watch this system. They're going to cast lots, is what they're doing. We liken it to dice. I don't care. All right? Some sort of system. And what happens is there's how many tribes? There's 12 tribes of Israel. So whatever it is, there's 12 sides. Okay? To whatever thing that they're using. And whatever it is, guess what? It falls on one of those tribes. We know that the guilty person's going to be in one of those. So you take the dice. Well, I'll just call it dice, okay? It's dice. There's 12 numbers. You know, you can go from 1. I can't go 1 to 12. You go 2 to 12. But anyway, you get the idea. They roll the dice, and it lands on the number for Judah. Now, how wonderful is this? Because the promise, and the promise of a Savior, the promise of grace and forgiveness comes through which tribe? Judah. Okay? This is just so cool. So it falls on there. Now, we take and get rid of the 11/12 of the more than 3 million people that are there. And we bring down 1/12 of them, roughly. Okay? And now we're going to do it again, and it's divided by families, by the tribes within the family units within the tribe. And it falls upon, isn't it Zimri next? Zimri is next? Yeah. So it falls on Zimri. Everybody else is excused except all the family, it's a family reunion. You've seen some of the family reunions. We would have the Awe reunion, or on my mom's side, the Lefebvre reunion, and it got to be so many people that you had to step further back to get them all in the picture, so much so you can't recognize a single person in those photos because you're too far back. So it goes down to that family. So which household within the family, and then we cast the dice, and it lands on it, and we cast it, and it goes all the way down from more than 3 million people down to one person. The odds are astronomical. Isn't that great? This is so cool. And as a mathematician and a statistician, this is just lovely. This is impossible. Yes, I wanted to do the math, but I saved you. I didn't. Because you see how astronomical it is, right? And what happens? The lot falls on Achan. And Achan says, yep. This is better than anything David Copperfield could ever do. Okay? I mean, seriously, this is good stuff. And Achan goes, you could just see. I mean, if you could put yourself in that spot, you go, okay, that was lucky that it landed on my tribe of Judah. But then when it lands on his household, the Zimri household, and then it goes down all the way and it keeps coming, you can see Achan's eyes going, inside, but he doesn't want to give it away, and it falls on him. What else is he going to say other than, yep, I did it? I did it. I saw the plunder. You can hear the excuses. There was so much there. I just wanted a little bit. It wasn't going to hurt anybody. It was going to help. I was going to give a part of it to the poor. You can hear all the excuses, right? That you've heard over time. That's basically in the Pastor Awe version of the Bible that you should never buy. But that's what you can hear, because I know human nature and I've heard it for more than 30 years. Well, I'm going to do it, but it's going to help so many good people. You don't realize what you're taking away from to be able to quote unquote help. In Luther's day it was to build St. Peter's Basilica. And I've told you how gorgeous it is. That means how many people had nothing. Absolutely nothing, died because everything was taken from them to build this beautiful basilica. And it is gorgeous. But it's not worth it. Not for the lives of. And this is the excuse that Achan gives. Now, verse 25. Verse 25.
And Joshua said, why did you bring trouble on us? The Lord brings trouble on you today. And all Israel stoned him with stones. They burned him with fire and stoned them with stones. And they raised over him a great heap of stones that remains to this day. Then the Lord turned from his burning anger. Therefore, to the day of the name is the name of the place called the Valley of Achan.
Now you know why his name is Achan. Because he sure was Achan. And yeah, it's a variant of it. Okay? Yes, Kevin.
It said they stoned West. The rest
His family. Yeah, if you read the verses in between, and it was just to save time, this is why I'm summarizing it, but his family also. Because did his family know about it?
And his oxen, donkey,
And the animals and all of it, it's all about stuff. Guess what? You end up with nothing. You can't take it with you. Yeah, it's the whole family. So, what's being talked about here? This is an example of robbery. All right? This is the example of robbery, robbing from the Lord in this case, and the results, the consequences for robbery. What's our consequences today for robbery? Yeah. Yeah. And that's what frustrated Luther in his day as well, and it frustrates us sometimes too. How seriously did the Lord take it? Yeah, very. Achan. You won't forget Achan, right? You won't. Take a look at John chapter 12. This is in the New Testament. This is in the Gospels. So when you get to about the back quarter of the Bible there, it'll start Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. If you're in Malachi, that's the end of the Old Testament. If you get to Acts, Romans, you've gone too far. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. John chapter 12, verses 4 through 6.
one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, objected, why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages. He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put in it.
I love John's gospel because John's gospel will put things in there that no other gospel will include. And John gives you the actual words that you want to hear and know. All right? The excuse that Judas used was, why are you doing that when we could sell it and get money to give it to the poor? We hear this all the time. But John writes, that's not what he really wanted. He wanted the money because he's a thief. Boy, we couldn't get away with that today at all. Could we? Theft. A thief. Because he even goes further, because Judas was the keeper of the money for the disciples, and what did he do? This is the only place it tells us this, by the way. He dipped his hand in and he spent it on himself. After all, they are business expenses, and I'm being reimbursed for all my time that I've been given. I heard every excuse under the sun. I swear to you I have. Go ahead, try to make something up I haven't had to deal with or hear. I'm amazed at how we'll fall for it. Take a look back in the Old Testament, 2 Kings. It's right after 1 Kings. All right, so from Joshua, you go Judges, Ruth, 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, 2 Kings. If you get to 1 or 2 Chronicles, you've gone too far. So 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 20 through 24. Those 5 verses.
After they entered the city, Elisha said, Lord, open the eyes of these men so they can see. Then the Lord opened their eyes, and they looked, and there they were, inside Samaria.
Are you in 2 Kings chapter 5?
No.
I was going to say, that's a great story, and I know that story, but it's not going to say what I wanted to. 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 20 through 24. You got it now, Kevin? If it's that verse, you want to read everything but that verse is what you're telling me? Or this is the verse I want to hear. Go ahead.
Gehazi, servant of Elisha, the man of God, said to himself, my master was too easy on Naaman, this Aramean, by not accepting from him what he brought. As surely as the Lord lives, I will come after him and get something from him. So when Gehazi hurried after Naaman. When Naaman saw him running toward him, he got down from the chariot to meet him. Is everything all right? He asked. Everything is all right, Gehazi answered. My master sent me to say, 2 young men from the company of the prophets have just come to me from the hill country of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 sets of clothing. By all means, take 2 talents, said Naaman. He urged Gehazi to accept them, and then tied up the 2 talents of silver in 2 bags, the 2 sets of clothing. He gave them to 2 of his servants, and they carried them ahead of Gehazi. When Gehazi came to the hill, he took the things from the servants and put them away in the house. He sent the men away, and they left. Then he went in and stood before his master Elisha. Where have you been, Gehazi? Elisha asked. Your servant didn't go anywhere, Gehazi answered.
All right. So 2 Kings chapter 5. Let me give you a little bit of background, and that is Naaman. Does anybody know who Naaman is? Tell us.
Well, Naaman was like the church in
Yeah, of not Israel, but Syria.
Syria,
Okay?
and he got very sick.
What was his sickness?
Leprosy.
Leprosy. Exactly. So, a little servant girl tells Naaman, I know a man of God. His name is Elisha, not Elijah, Elisha, who will help you. He's a man of Yahweh, a man of the Lord. Go to him. He'll tell you what to do. Naaman goes, yeah, a little country like Israel is going to know medicine better than my people, the Syrians. This is the pastoral version of the Bible. You should read it in its context, okay? But that's in essence what's being said and done. And eventually Naaman does go. Because what does he have to lose is basically what happens. And Elisha says, dip yourself into the water of the that big river, Jordan River, the Jordan River 7 times, mine goes blank, the Jordan River that goes 7 times, and he said, really, seriously, that's what you're going to have me do? Finally, he's convinced, he does it, he's healed of the leprosy, it's totally gone. And he's so grateful that he wants to pay Elisha, and Elisha says, no, you can't pay me. This is of the Lord, and I don't want to take payment. You're not paying for this. This is a gift from God, all that kind of thing. So they go on their own way. But a servant of Elisha by the name of Gehazi got into his mind, well, if my master won't take it, I'll take it. Because he saw all that glitters as gold, and he went after him like was read, and made up this whole story. I mean, none of that was true, what he said. And Naaman says, yeah, don't take 1, take 2 talents. And he ends up paying for it. He's so grateful, and now he feels better because he paid for this work to be done. Gehazi feels better because he's wealthy as can be. And Elisha says, yep, and so Gehazi covers the lie with another lie. And now take a look at verse 27. What happens to Gehazi? For doing that, you will take Naaman's disease upon yourself. And he was. And not just him, but his children and his children's children and their children. Sure hope it was worth it. This is all about dishonesty. Now, there's a reason why I share this to you, because I know from the beginning, you know that robbery, theft, dishonesty are wrong, right? You knew that. But these are stories you're going to know and you're going to remember, I pray that you do, that tell us in Scripture how seriously wrong it is. Not just, oh, no, but this is serious. It's seriously wrong. Okay? So, we see all of that happening, and it's always happened. It happens today. Our problem today is we don't get the leprosy thing that when we walk away, I become leprous like that. But there are some people, right or wrong, will say, well, maybe that's why. I can't believe I'm going to use this as an example. I can't. Because, okay, I'm going to use this as an example, but I don't think it's necessarily true. Okay? Maybe that's why global warming's happening. I'm not necessarily saying that global warming is happening. In fact, I've been checking with some scientists who actually do this with a field of study, and our temperatures haven't changed in the last 50 years. So I don't know what evidence anybody has for that. But I've heard people say global warming's happening because that's why the glaciers are melting, which, by the way, they've melted before, and then they formed again. I just want you to know, because it's what is shown in history, but that's neither here nor there. But a lot of times we take a look at natural disasters and we look at trends that happen over decades, if not centuries, and say, oh, this is why this trend is changing. You can just imagine in another couple 100 years from now, they're going to say, this is why global cooling is happening. Whatever it will be. Boy, if people start to see this, I could start getting emails saying, yeah, of course, global, how can you say global? Anyway, but you understand the example? So what's forbidden? Let's take a look at something more modern. I'm going to use something that's near and dear to all of our hearts that happened for us, that tie in robbery, theft, and dishonesty. How dare I? Gambling. What is it? Well, it's motivated by selfishness and greed. I want to get something for little or nothing. And it puts me first. You all are in the same boat that I'm in. You're taking the chance that I'm taking. And it doesn't care what happens to other people, what it does for them. In the city of a small city, a small town in Nebraska that shall remain nameless, Tilden, they decided, the powers that be, the mayor and the city council, of which were members of my congregation, so just to be forthright here, decided that they were going to legalize gambling in Tilden. I didn't even know about it. It just slipped through and it happened and all of a sudden it was going on and all the people who are gambling know about it. All of a sudden, for the first time in my 17 years there, and it was sooner than that, say 15 years there, I was the president and the treasurer of the Ministerial Alliance, and so if somebody needed some help and they couldn't get it from Goldenrod Hills or any of the other sources, they would come to me and I would help them. And they need help with food or with rent or whatever it is, and that's true everywhere. But for the first time ever, I ran out of funds. Now, I'm not saying we have a lot of funds, but what I'm saying is the system is set up that we go through all the government agencies that are there, and usually like this time of year, they run out of funds, and then we get to step in and supplement it and all of that. But I had a run of people who needed help. Come to find out, after I did some talking, they were all playing Keno and gambling in Tilden, trying to get more money for the other, and now they didn't have any money left for food or to pay their rent or anything like that. Well, I went pastor all over my members because they were the ones who were leading this in the city council and everything, and I'm going, why in the world would you institute something that all of a sudden you didn't even talk to me about and you know better, and now I'm getting a flood of people who can't even afford to pay their rent or anything. And the mayor said to me, well, we were getting behind on our revenue for the city, and it was to help be able to provide for the ambulance and for the hospital, which soon closed afterwards anyway. It doesn't care about this. It just cares about the end result. And that's what a lot of times it is. So, take a look at John chapter 19, verses 23 and 24.
When the soldiers crucified Jesus, they took his clothes, divided them into 4 shares, one for each of them, with the undergarment remaining. This garment was seamless, woven in one piece from top to bottom. Let's not tear it, they said to one another. Let's decide by lot who will get it. This happened that the scripture might be fulfilled, which said, they divided my garments among them and cast lots for my clothing.
So cast lots, they were gambling for it, is what they were doing. And I can go into all the detail of the crucifixion and what they were doing and why that clothing was so expensive and why it was really worth something. And it was just because they wanted to make fun of Jesus, and now they're done with that, and now they're going to further embarrass him by taking the garments of a king and removing it, but now they won't want it. So let's gamble. Let's put in something little so we can get a lot for it and be able to do that. And they left Jesus hanging there naked. Okay? Yes?
Okay, so they use lots in certain ways, which is okay. But if you're using it for to gain something besides the truth, the other way they use the gamble, I guess the lot,
Sure, sure.
selection,
Chance.
was
Not your son.
to find the truth. That this, I mean,
There's going to be a simple rule of thumb, and I already stated it, and I want to state it again. What is the motivating factor? I don't care what method or way, I don't care about any of that. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is the heart. What motivates me to do whatever it is I'm going to come up with to do? Is it selfishness? If selfishness is the reason, it's wrong. I'm going to go out, and there's probably a rope around my neck as I go right on the edge here. If we as a church decide to have a fundraiser and we want to tap into people's selfishness, whatever that fundraiser may be, because they're going to be selfish, and the end is to help support, a team to go to Poland. But if the means is to tap into people's selfishness to get the money, we're wrong. It's the selfishness. And that's what we're talking about. Before, what we read about the lots and falling on Achan and all that was a way for God to communicate who it was, and that was that means. There was nothing in it for anybody except death for Achan and his family. That was bad. And there's a story that's written about that, which just is an awful story. I can't think of it. And it's about the same type of principle about a town that does the same thing that every year so that they could have a harvest. What's the name of that story? The lottery. I hate that story. Oh, that's an awful story. And they made a movie out of it. Oh, you can see the anger. But anyway, but selfishness. Whether it's casting lot, whether it's stealing, whatever it is, it's the selfishness. Does that make sense?
So we're not going to be raffling off a F-150 truck.
As long as I'm here, please don't. Please don't. Now, since this commandment is so far-reaching, as just indicated, it's necessary to teach it well and to explain it to the common people. By the way, the word explains in a different color because I had a link to a website that no longer is there. It was a good link, too. That's a shame. Be good stewards of the stuff that God has blessed you with. All right? I try to check myself. So if a little girl or two little girls come to your door last night, say, and they're trying to sell something that I really don't want, I wrote a check to just donate because I'll be glad to help support that cause, but I just don't want your stuff. It was candy. I just didn't want it. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong to buy the candy from them. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you were doing it, let's say it was a raffle ticket because you're not supporting the cause, you want to win the truck or whatever, and you want to pay $1 for it, it's selfish. Be good stewards of the stuff that you are blessed with. Budget and plan ahead. So what are we talking about? What does he require of us? Tithe. The word tithe. This is a Latin word. It's a Greek word. It's a Hebrew word. It starts back in the Old Testament. It literally means 10%. That's what it literally means. But it actually goes beyond that. Tithing is about first fruits. And the reason it got the name tithe is because when you harvested about 10% of your field the very first time. But sometimes harvest went to 20% because that's what it was. So the emphasis would be on the first fruits. It's about first commandment, God's first. It's about trusting that God blessed us with everything we have, everything we are, and we give back to Him, continuing to trust that He's going to bless us with whatever it is. We don't have to look this up, I don't think, but Leviticus 27, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, the third book, this is exactly what it says. Set aside your tithes and your offerings, the first fruits to the Lord, for it is good for us to do that. What's the motivation for this? The motivation is action of trust. Kind of like what a child does. You know, let's use that precious little one back there. She doesn't have a care or worry in the world. But mom does. She just loves mom and knows mom's going to take care of everything. Right? In fact, she just laughs and giggles and plays, and probably, my son had so much trust in me that when I played with him, when he saw me come in, he would run and jump and fly toward me. Because you see, I played with him so much, throwing him in the air, and I always caught him. So unbeknownst to me, he just jumped. Good thing I caught him. Most of the time. No. If you meet him and he acts a little weird, now you know why. No. But I mean, there's that trust that's there. As children of God, that's what we do. We trust in him. He's the giver of all those things. This is an action of selflessness when we tithe. All right? This is not about what's in it for the church. This is about us as a group sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ by reaching out and helping others. That's what it's about. And it's for our spiritual strengthening. The offering is a time of giving of ourselves and trusting in God. It's not a commercial break. It's a part of our worship. It's part of who and what we are. So what I actually did last night is 2 little girls came selling candy that I did not want at all. But you look at those precious little faces, and they're out there, and they're trying to help their cause. And so I asked them, what candy do you like? And they told me which ones. I like this one, but she likes that one. Okay, I'll get one of each. And that's what I did. I bought a big bag of each of those favorite candies, and I said, you eat the candy, and you keep the money. Why? Simply because look what it does to help that cause, and I really didn't want any of it. It's just for a few dollars. And look at the message of Christ, because by the way, I don't have cash, so I have to write a check, and on it says Reverend Michael Awe, who's helping the Catholic Church raise whatever it is that they're raising for those kids. What a great opportunity, honestly. And their eyes are going, really? It's just some candy. But do you get it? I mean, look, it's about trust, selflessness, and it's about our strength in relationship with Christ. We do the first fruit. And when we don't, we steal. Because everything we are and everything we have belongs to God. That's 100% He is. That's why we say and sing, we give thee but thine own. We're giving to you all that is yours anyway. That's what we're doing. Does that make sense? So afterwards, if you want to tell me that you want to start doing this because you haven't been, but you like it, and you think it's a great idea, you just have one question for me. Does that mean before or after taxes, you didn't listen to a thing I just said? Okay? It has nothing to do with that. It has the action of trust. It's the first fruit in selflessness. And by the way, I have found that when churches do this, it's amazing the work for the gospel they're able to do. And you take an active role in that. You'll hear more about it in January. All right. By the way, 1 Corinthians 16 verses 1 to 2 says, at the beginning of every week, set aside your offerings and tithes as you come to worship. That's 1 Corinthians 16, 1 and 2. All right. What is God requiring of us? To help others to keep and improve their stuff. I love numismatism. I love collecting coins and currency. And I don't want your collection. But I love to look at it, and I love to tell you the value of it, and I'd love to help you with all of it, because I really do enjoy collecting it. And I want you to be able to enjoy that. All these verses talk about how we're there to help others. Obviously, I'm getting toward the end of my time. You know, it's kind of cool, because I've been doing this for 53 minutes and 41 seconds. So I know how much time I've got. So who has failed to keep the 7th commandment? Romans chapter 3 verse 23 says, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. We all have sinned, all but one. And that one who's been perfect is Jesus. How did he rescue you from your sins that break this commandment? He lived that perfect life. He died that perfect death. And I didn't add number 3, so please, Debbie.
He rose.
He rose again to give us that perfect everlasting life. Very good. Any other comments, questions?
Somebody overcharges you, they're stealing.
Yes. Doc says if somebody is overcharging you, they're stealing. Yes. Not saying that they can't do it for a profit. We know that. That's a part of our system. But when they take advantage of you, yeah.
We can afford it.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Any other comments, questions? Yeah, Pastor Adams.
Yeah, radio this morning, the Methodist Church said that the church computer was hacked, and that they sent out emails to all their members saying, your pastor is asking you to buy gift cards, $200 gift cards.
Indulgences.
Do not buy gift card online. That's the biggest scam there is.
Do not buy gift cards.
For anybody from anybody online.
I will be 100% honest with you. I have received gift cards as gifts from very well-meaning people. I appreciate it. It's not the amount all the time that you say is on it. Just so you know. All right. Let me stop recording.